Hey, what's up guys? Nick Helton here, and today I'm gonna go over my own individual workout routine that I've been performing right here in my home gym. The reason I wanna do that is to show you guys why I'm constructing exercises and movements the way I am, how I'm doing it so that you can kind of do it on your own and follow along, or if you wanna craft your own mobility program from the information I provide, feel free to do that as well. Hopefully this gives you guys some better insight and ideas into how a mobility circuit, or in general how a circuit is structured. And with that said, let's just jump into the actual exercise routine and I'll walk you guys through every individual movement. Okay, so on the screen, what I'm gonna do is put the actual exercise routine that's going on in 5 times speed. So this is going by pretty quickly on your screen if you're watching it now. Don't worry about what's going on. I'm gonna walk you through each individual thing. It's gonna look like a lot, but really we're doing each exercise 3 times, so it should be pretty easy to follow along with. So the way that this workout is structured, the first movement that you can see me doing was the bodyweight rows. Now Carly is going to be demonstrating the bodyweight rows as well with my homemade sort of TRX type straps. If you take a look at how it's structured, it's hanging from the pull-up bar. I'm making a video right now on how to make your own homemade pull-up bar, or homemade TRX bands on your pull-up bar, I should say. But our first movements that we're going through, we're each doing bodyweight rows, 3 sets of 12, and goblet or front squats. I'm using a barbell here and she used a dumbbell. It's the same mechanics. In general, you just have a different rack position. So that's what I have available in my house. I have a barbell. I unfortunately do not have enough weight. I did not think far enough ahead. I just purchased a few cheap bumper plates that I found online, and I definitely need to expand my collection of bumper plates, but I've got it at home, so it's better than nothing. So that was our first sort of set of exercises. While she was doing the bodyweight rows, I was performing the goblet front squat. Again, 3 sets of 12. I was taking about a 30-second rest in between. These movements are challenging, but it's not max effort right now because it's kind of hard to make it into more of a max effort type thing. This is, in general, what I'm going after is mobility, a bit of hypertrophy, and really some conditioning, because we're doing these with minimal rest. If you want to go just purely strength, you need to be doing something that is going to be much more weighted. So if you had availability for weight, then you need to kind of add something that, say, you can do maybe the 6 to 8 rep range. If it's something you can do 15 to 20 times, you're probably not going to get as much of a strength benefit per se. This next circuit that we both have going on here is an overhead press, as well as a biceps curl on the homemade, I'm calling it the NRX, I'm calling it the Nick, the Nick workout straps. Anyway, homemade workout straps. Carly's doing the biceps curl and I'm doing an overhead press, and we switch back and forth. This one we're going 3 sets of 10. The idea here is, for me, this weight for 10 reps is actually decently challenging. I'm trying to work on more of a strict press. As you watch my form there, it could definitely be a little better. I think when you watch any sort of exercise or movement on 5 times or multiple speeds, it tends to look a little worse. It looks a little sloppier just because you see all of those sort of discrepancies really highlighted, because it just goes so quickly and it just looks like you're flopping all over the place, when in reality in slow motion it's probably not as bad. Our next sort of set is our lunge and pull-up combo. So we're doing 2 sets of 10 for the lunges and 2 sets of 10 for the pull-ups. Now, I'll be fully honest, I do a lot of chin-ups. I actually don't do as much pull-ups just because I enjoy chin-ups more. Pull-ups are definitely a weak point for me. So if you watch this video when I'm doing my pull-ups, I'm definitely struggling. My arms are done for. I'm using a little bit of momentum here, and I'm definitely touching my feet onto the ground. So a little idea for pull-ups: if you have a hard time just doing straight bodyweight pull-ups, when you get to the bottom of the movement, just use your feet to help yourself raise up, and then increase your time on the eccentric. So on the eccentric lowering, if you slow that down, you're still getting time under tension without, making it impossible if you can't do a full bodyweight pull-up. Okay, so now we've moved on from I'm still doing my lunges. So I've got lunges, one more set of lunges. If you look, I'm doing 2 sets of 10 on each side. What I'm trying to do, and it's kind of hard to see from the video, is I'm trying to keep most of my weight on my front leg. Now, the idea with that is you're kind of doing like almost an isolated kind of one-legged lunge versus doing both sides. It just makes it a little more challenging when you don't have as much weight to kind of overload your lunge. I think that dumbbell is about 35 pounds. Typically, if I'm doing lunges, I might have 50, 55s in each hand, so 35 is definitely not on the more challenging side of things. Our next sets, as you can see here, I have the triceps overhead extension, and Carly is doing what I call the Swiss ball sort of scapular series. The idea is the first movement is sort of a T, so just arms straight out to the sides. The next one is extension, so going straight back, just literally reaching behind your back. And then the set after that is going to be overhead. So I'll show you on mine, it's a little bit easier to see. This first one is the behind the back. So I'm going into a bit of a shoulder extension movement. The next one is sort of a T shape where I'm going straight out to the sides. And the one after that is the vertical or reaching straight overhead. Those little dumbbells, they're either 3 or 5 pounds that I remember, but they're pretty light. You don't need a lot of weight with this one. It's really pretty fatiguing, especially after you've done all of these sets. Now our next one here is going to be push-ups. So both of us just did push-ups to failure and really tried to just fatigue ourselves as quickly as possible and do as many reps, basically an AMRAP set. So that's what you're seeing here, 3 sets of push-ups to failure. And that's it, that's the entire workout routine. So if you're watching that and thinking, wow, that was a little bit quick, that was kind of by design. I didn't want to have you guys watch our rest periods or kind of watch us sit around breathing heavily. That's probably pretty boring. So what I want to do is break it down a little further now. So what I organized it into was essentially 5 different segments. And I'm just going to throw them up on the screen right now. The first segment was the bodyweight row combined with a front squat. Now the reason I combined these 2 movements in a sort of circuit fashion was that one, bodyweight rows just primarily works your shoulders, your biceps, you know, kind of some of the lats as you're doing your pulling motion. And the front squat is going to be mostly focused on the quads. Obviously the shoulders have to hold the weight up in a front rack position, but it's more isometric. So it's a nice way to challenge 2 muscle groups that shouldn't be too fatigued consecutively after performing those movements. I also don't have a whole lot of weight in my house. If you do, I would just recommend doing a normal squat. You can do a barbell back squat or whatever you like, but for me, performing a front squat is a challenging movement regardless of what the weight is. So taking a light weight, going front squat with it is a way to challenge that movement without having access to a whole entire stack of weights. The next little section, I'm going to throw it up on the screen, is going to be overhead press and a biceps curl. So the reason that I like to include those 2, one, I just enjoy hypertrophy work. You know, I've done hypertrophy work pretty much my entire lifting career, if you want to call it that. It's just something I've always enjoyed. So that's just personal preference. And overhead press is one of my favorite exercises in general. So biceps curls aren't too fatiguing in general for me. And I can easily pair that with an overhead press, which is a pretty fatiguing exercise. Next up is the lunge and pull-up sort of combination. Again, pull-ups I'm not very good at, and the lunges were quite easy for me because I didn't have enough weight. So I paired an exercise that wasn't as challenging with something that was very challenging for me in general, which is the bodyweight pull-up. I think that's a nice way to combine 2 motions, something a little easier with something a little bit more challenging. One's also a lower body dominant movement, while the other is an upper dominant movement. I probably wouldn't combine a squat right after a lunge because that fatigue is going to accumulate unless you're not performing something in the strength training continuum. After that, I've got the triceps extension with the Swiss ball kind of scapular series. The reason I like the scapular series is it gets a lot of things done. It doesn't look very hard, but try it. It's pretty challenging, and it kind of works some of your scapular muscles, your rhomboids, those sort of things, and you don't really need a lot of weight. Again, I had 3 or maybe it was 5 pounds for the dumbbells, and that's pretty fatiguing for most of those exercises. I also again combine that with the triceps extension, which I just like for hypertrophy purposes. The final movement on that list was push-ups, fairly self-explanatory. I just happen to have the little push-up handles handy at home. I don't think it makes all that much of a difference, but I can get a little bit more range of motion out of those handles. So in general, looking at the format of that workout, I've got rep ranges that are mostly in the hypertrophy range. So everything was done in a 10 to 15 rep range intentionally. I also did very low rests for things like the lunge, where it wasn't extremely challenging in terms of actual fatigue accumulating. And I added more rests for things like the overhead press and the front squat, just because those are a little bit more challenging for me in general. So when you look at building your own workout, or even doing one of my workouts that I posted on YouTube, the things you need to consider: one, how challenging is the movement for you? If it's really easy, you shouldn't be resting very long. You should just jump right into the next exercise. If it's extremely challenging, you're panting, you can't catch your breath, you need to rest in order to have an adequate working set right after that. Hopefully this video makes some sense to you guys. I wanted to make this just so I could kind of walk you through how I perform my own workout routine at home. I'm gonna be posting follow-ups to this and updating and giving you guys different options, different ideas. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them down below. If you like the video or like this type of content, drop a like on the video. It lets me know that you want me to make more of this specific content. And if you enjoyed it, consider subscribing. I do make a lot of mobility videos, physical therapy oriented exercises, as well as just a general overall exercise routine that I post on my YouTube channel quite frequently. Thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate you guys.